A sharp knife is less dangerous than a dull one.
Down below here we have a...
This is how American families are living in their new homes.
There was a time when every home had a little magic. Now they all feel the same. This video uncovers the forgotten designs that once made houses feel alive. But what vanished when homes stopped surprising us? Stick around. Some of these features broke the rules in all the right ways. There was something magical about the way the old telephone sat in its little nook. Not on a table, not hanging on a wall like we see in movies, but placed neatly in a purpose-built cubby carved right into the wall itself. These were telephone niches, and they were as common as house keys back in the day. You would see them in hallways, right outside the kitchen, or even tucked near the staircase, with a tiny shelf for the family phone book. Yes, an actual book. And maybe a little drawer for pens, paper, or the odd scribbled message. These spaces were like the beating heart of the house's social life. It is where gossip was whispered, news was broken, and the kids begged their parents to let them stay out late. Today, it is hard to imagine building a wall just for a phone, but back then, it was a sign of class and convenience. The sound of that rotary ring echoed through the whole house, and whoever answered it first? Well, that was usually the person who got stuck taking the message for everyone else. It is a slice of life that simply does not exist anymore, but it lived, loud and proud, in homes all across America. Speaking of things built right into the house, you are not going to believe what kind of doors were hiding inside the walls. For your milk. Picture this. You wake up, walk to the side of your kitchen, and open a tiny little door built right into your house. Behind it, a bottle of fresh milk, cool and ready to pour, maybe even some butter or cream depending on the day. No, it is not magic. That was the milk door, also called a milk chute. These small pass-through compartments were genius in their simplicity. One side opened from the outside, where the milkman would quietly place the day's delivery. The other opened from inside the house, so you never had to go out in your slippers or bathrobe. It was the drive-through window before there were drive-throughs. These doors were more than convenient. They were a sign that the world once ran on a shared rhythm. Everyone knew when the milkman came by. You could even leave payments or notes inside. Some had little shelves, others had insulation. And most people never locked them, because who would steal milk? Of course, once grocery stores and home refrigeration became widespread, the milk door quietly disappeared, sealed up, painted over, or just forgotten. But somewhere out there, behind layers of drywall, a few still exist. Hidden time capsules. And if you think delivering milk through a wall sounds wild, wait until you hear about the homes that were designed for smoke. Back in the middle of the 20th century, smoking was not just accepted, it was expected, and American homes were ready for it. That is where built-in ashtray stands came in. These were not just ashtrays placed on coffee tables or countertops. No, these were recessed, often permanent fixtures embedded right into walls, armrests, and even lampstands. You could walk into a living room, and there it was, your own little designated smoke spot, classy as could be. Some were ceramic, some were chrome. A few even had lids to keep the ashes tidy. And they were everywhere, in kitchens, in bathrooms, in bedrooms. The ultimate sign of a home that was with it. Even guests had their own designated ashtrays. People took pride in them. Some were decorative, shaped like seashells or horseshoes. Others were sleek and utilitarian, and it was not just adults using them. Teens had their own, often built into the back of desks or vanities. Today, of course, the idea seems almost alien. We cover smoke detectors in foil just to cook without setting them off. But back then, these ashtrays were part of the home's soul. And when the culture shifted, they vanished fast, ripped out, tiled over, or collecting dust as relics of a time no one wants to remember, but no one can forget. But the next room? Oh, that is where the real memories were made. Think beanbags, shag carpet, and absolute chaos. Let us talk about the rumpus room. If the living room was where adults behaved themselves, the rumpus room was where the kids got wild. Usually tucked away in the basement, This was the unofficial playground of every suburban household from the 1950s to the 1970s. Carpeted in wall-to-wall shag, lit by lava lamps, and often filled with beanbag chairs, dartboards, and mismatched furniture, the rumpus room was every child's dream and every parent's secret weapon. You could send the kids down there for hours, let them roughhouse, make noise, and burn off all that energy while the grown-ups enjoyed some blessed peace upstairs. It was not about looking nice, it was about cutting loose. Some had jukeboxes, others had board games stacked to the ceiling, and every now and then you would find a couch that doubled as a trampoline. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Over time, the idea faded as homes got bigger and open concepts took over. Now, everything is multifunctional. But there was something beautiful about a room that existed just for noise, mess, and memory making. The name says it all, rumpus. No rules, just vibes. But even in the loudest house, you still needed a way to call the kids upstairs. And you will not believe how we used to do that. Long before cell phones and even before cordless landlines, families had a different way of yelling through the walls. And no, it was not just yelling. We are talking about intercom systems. Installed in kitchens, bedrooms, garages, and hallways, these things were high-tech at the time. Built right into the wall, they had push buttons, tinny speakers, and a magical call button that could summon anyone from anywhere. It was like living inside your own hotel. "Dinner's ready!" would echo from speaker to speaker. You could check in on the baby, call the kids in from the yard, or talk to your spouse while still folding laundry. They even had a radio function in some fancier models, so you could blast the news or music in every room. These systems were sold as time savers, but they also showed off how cutting-edge your home was. Nothing said modern American household like a wall-mounted microphone next to your fridge. Eventually, of course, they wore out, the wiring went bad, or the kids used them to eavesdrop, and just like that, they fell out of style, replaced by text messages, smart speakers, and yelling again. But if you ever stayed at Grandma's house and heard your name echo through a crackly little box, you will never forget it. Now, how about something we used to build into the wall that flipped down like a magic trick? Get ready, because we are unfolding something special. It looked like a cabinet, just a little rectangle in the wall with a tiny knob. But open it up and suddenly you had an ironing board swinging down like a Murphy bed for your clothes. Fold-out ironing boards in the wall were the peak of space-saving genius. These things were especially popular in mid-century homes, when every inch of space had to count. The board folded out flat, usually right next to the laundry area or inside the kitchen pantry. You did not have to drag a heavy metal contraption from the closet. Just pop it open, plug in the iron, and get to work. Some even had a tiny shelf or built-in plug to hold the iron itself, along with a little light above the board. Now that was fancy. Housewives adored these because they made chores quicker. And let's face it, they just looked slick. Like the house was in on the secret with you. Eventually, though, as trends moved toward larger laundry rooms and portable everything, these ironing stations disappeared. But for the folks who grew up with one, there is a real nostalgia there. It was like opening a secret door into domestic life. Now, speaking of secret doors, the next one was not about cleaning your shirt. It was about making sure your closet smelled like the forest. Walk into an old house and open a closet door, and you might get hit with a smell that is oddly comforting. Woody, warm, a little spicy. That would be cedar, not a scent diffuser, not a spray. Actual cedar wood, lined across the walls of the closet from top to bottom. These cedar-lined closets were the silent guardians of America's wardrobes. They protected against moths, mildew, and musty smells. But they also added a kind of rustic luxury, like storing your clothes inside a tree trunk at a high-end cabin. The idea was simple. Cedar wood naturally repels insects, so why not turn your entire closet into a bug-proof haven? People did not just store coats in there, they kept heirlooms, wool suits, and seasonal clothes safe year-round. Some closets were fully lined, others just had a single cedar panel on one wall. Either way, it gave the whole room a spa vibe long before that was a thing. These days, you might see cedar blocks or hangers sold in stores, but entire closets made of the stuff? That has faded into the woodwork, literally. The world got synthetic, and the cedar charm became a relic. But if you think that was clever, wait until you see how people used to pass food across rooms without ever leaving their chair. It was the original shortcut for busy kitchens, long before microwaves or DoorDash deliveries. Right there in the wall, usually between the kitchen and dining room, was a little opening known as a pass-through window. Not big enough to walk through, just big enough to pass a steaming pot of mashed potatoes or a stack of plates. It was part convenience, part conversation starter, and part dinner-time drama stage. You could poke your head through and call out, "Who wants seconds?" Or you could slide a dish over without juggling it across the carpet. In bigger homes, they were framed out in wood or tile with little ledges to rest a casserole on. In smaller homes, they were purely functional, a hole in the wall that saved Mom 10 steps at every meal. Some even had shutters or swinging doors, so you could close the kitchen once dinner was served. But eventually, open-concept living took over. People tore down the wall entirely instead of carving a window into it. And just like that, the pass-through became passé. Still, it had its charm. It turned dinner into a kind of performance. But if passing potatoes through a hole in the wall sounds odd, imagine burning your garbage in a machine tucked right next to the toilet. Bathroom incinerators were exactly what they sound like. Tiny metal boxes installed near the toilet, designed to burn trash right on the spot. Sounds efficient, right? Maybe. But also, just a little bit terrifying. These units were popular for a short time in the mid-20th century, mostly in homes that were obsessed with cutting-edge convenience. They were meant for tissues, cotton balls, wrappers, and small bits of waste, not, let us be clear, diapers or anything major. You would flip a switch, hear a low hum, and then wait while your trash slowly vanished into ash. It was like having a personal bonfire inside your bathroom. Some even came with a little chimney that vented outside. Of course, the smell was something. And safety? Let's just say it was a different time. These machines were prone to overheating, and if you put the wrong thing in, you might get more flames than you bargained for. Eventually, people realized that trash cans and weekly pickups were a whole lot safer. So the bathroom incinerator quietly disappeared, along with the era of lighting your garbage on fire next to your shampoo. But while the bathroom was heating up, the beauty routines of the day were getting pretty cool. And I mean that literally. Just wait until you see the hairdryers. Before there were curling wands, flat irons, and hair straighteners with 10 settings, there was one holy grail of home beauty, the built-in hairdryer chair. That is right, just like the ones at the salon. These were dome-shaped dryers, fixed right into vanities or dressing tables, and they were everything. Sit down, flip a switch, and suddenly your head was enveloped in a low hum of warm air. These machines were especially popular in the 1950s and 1960s when hairstyles like the beehive or the bouffant required serious volume and serious time. The dryers were sleek, futuristic, and a little noisy, but they got the job done. Housewives would sit under them while flipping through magazines, sipping coffee, or catching up on the neighborhood gossip. Some units were even foldable, tucking away neatly when not in use. Today, we think of beauty appliances as portable and handheld. But back then, hair care was an event, and the home adapted accordingly. These built-in dryer chairs turned the average bathroom into a personal beauty parlor. Sadly, they went the way of Aquanet and home perms. But speaking of gossip, let us head into the hallway because the next stop is where stories were shared, secrets were spilled, and teenage hearts skipped a beat. Back in the days when phones had cords and privacy was a privilege, every hallway had a throne, and it was called the gossip bench. This was not just a chair. It was a hybrid masterpiece, a small wooden seat attached to a side table, designed specifically for long, dramatic phone calls. These benches were often placed right by the hallway phone nook, and if you were a teenager in the 1960s or 1970s, this was your favorite spot in the house. You would sit there for hours, twirling the phone cord, whispering about crushes, repeating, "No, you hang up," while your siblings paced in the background waiting for their turn. Some benches had a little drawer for pens and paper. Others had cushions and floral fabric, showing just how serious folks were about comfort during those marathon chats. It was furniture that served one purpose: conversation. But as phones got smaller, and then wireless, and then fit in your pocket, the gossip bench faded away. Today, they are vintage novelties. Back then, they were the nerve center of the household. And while you chatted away about school dances or new neighbors, something else might have been happening overhead. Quietly, from the ceiling, playing your favorite song. Imagine this. It is Sunday morning. You are eating breakfast, and faintly from above your head comes the sweet hum of big band music or the evening news. That was thanks to ceiling-mounted radio speakers, built-in audio systems that piped mono sound into every room of the house. They were a mid-century dream, a touch of Jetsons-style modernity, long before smart homes were even an idea. The radio unit was usually installed in the kitchen or living room, with a big dial and a few large buttons. You could pick a station, adjust the volume, and suddenly, the whole house was in sync. Of course, these systems had limitations. There was no surround sound, no playlists, just whatever the station was playing that day. But at the time, that was luxury. It was like the house had a voice. Eventually, stereo systems, boomboxes, and personal devices replaced the need. But if you ever stood under one of those tinny speakers and listened to Glenn Miller on a crackly station, you knew you were living in the future. Speaking of visions of the future, what about a bathroom that was all one color? Once upon a time, you did not just decorate your bathroom, you committed to it. We are talking full-color, floor-to-ceiling, single-shade devotion. Pastel pink, mint green, baby blue, or the ever-famous avocado, these were the color-coordinated bathroom suites of the 1950s through the 1970s. And when we say coordinated, we mean everything. The toilet, the tub, the sink, the tile, sometimes even the toilet paper, matched like a showroom display. First Lady Mamie Eisenhower helped popularize the trend with what people dubbed Mamie Pink. Entire homes were built with these candy-colored palettes baked into their bones. But of course, color trends change. What once looked stylish and luxurious now feels a bit like stepping into a cartoon. As minimalism took hold in the 1990s and 2000s, bold bathroom hues were slowly wiped away, replaced by whites, grays, and beige. Still, those vivid bathroom suites had a kind of joy to them. They made you feel something, even if that something was confusion. And if the color did not impress you, the next home feature definitely would, especially if you ever hated carrying a heavy laundry basket down the stairs. You would toss it in and forget about it. That was the beauty of the laundry chute. A small hatch built right into the hallway wall or bathroom cabinet, leading straight down into a hamper, or sometimes directly into the basement laundry room. Just open, drop, and go. These vertical passageways were like magic portals for dirty socks and sweaty gym clothes. No more lugging baskets down 2 flights, no more arguments about whose turn it was. You just lifted the flap and let gravity do the work. Kids treated them like secret tunnels. Parents treated them like a godsend. But like many good things, laundry chutes eventually went out of style. Safety concerns popped up, especially with young kids and pets. And then there was the fire risk, as an open shaft could let smoke and flames move between floors. Add in the rise of compact laundry machines on upper levels, and suddenly the chute became obsolete. But admit it, there is still something satisfying about the idea of chucking a shirt through the wall. And speaking of walls, wait until you hear about the windows that were not exactly windows. You have seen them in diners, office buildings, and those oddly retro suburban homes from the mid-20th century, glass block windows. These chunky, square panels were not quite clear and not quite frosted, making them the in-between choice for light and privacy. They were a favorite of architects who wanted homes to feel modern, but still secure. Each glass block was thick, textured, and usually about 8 inches square. When stacked together, they looked like a frozen waterfall, a rippling grid of light. But over time, people started to see them as, well, a little strange. They aged poorly, were hard to clean and made renovations a nightmare. Still, for a while, they represented a very specific version of the American dream. Sleek lines, geometric patterns, and just a little bit of mystery. You could not see out, but the light still came in. And now, most are gone, replaced with clean panes and open views. But you never forget your first home that had a glass block bathroom. Now let us stay in that same spirit, walls that surprise you, with something that used to slide out of nowhere and separate an entire room like a magician's trick. It is one of those things you barely notice until it slides into action. Pocket doors. Unlike the typical swinging door, pocket doors vanish into the wall when opened, like a magic trick you can walk through. They were the height of clever home design in the mid-20th century, especially in homes that wanted a clean, modern look without bulky doors breaking up the space. You would find them separating dining rooms from kitchens or closing off formal living rooms when company arrived. Over time, though, they became a pain. The tracks jammed, the rollers squeaked, and once one went off its rail, good luck fixing it without tearing open the wall. Slowly, builders turned back to swing doors, and pocket doors became a quirky throwback. But if those walls could talk, they would whisper about family dinners, polite goodbyes, and the satisfaction of sliding a whole room out of sight. Now, speaking of questionable style choices, wait until we step into the softest, strangest room in the house, the bathroom. We need to talk about the elephant, or maybe the shag, in the room. Carpeted bathrooms. Yes, wall-to-wall carpeting in the bathroom. Someone, somewhere, decided that stepping out of the shower onto tile was just too cold. So instead, they gave us plush floors that soaked up everything. These bathroom carpets matched the walls, the sink, the curtains. You had mint green bathrooms with mint green rugs from tub to toilet, pink bathrooms with matching fuzzy toilet seat covers and floor mats. It was peak comfort meets catastrophe. Over time, those comfy carpets turned into breeding grounds for mold, mildew, and mystery smells. Still, you have to give it credit for ambition. For a few decades, the bathroom was not just a place to get clean, it was a fully furnished retreat. These days, waterproof vinyl and ceramic tiles have reclaimed their throne. But every now and then, you stumble upon an old house with a powder blue plush floor and wonder what it was like to live so fearlessly. Now, if that made you raise an eyebrow, wait until you hear about the toilet paper holders. That could sing. You are sitting on the toilet, and suddenly the news comes on. Or maybe some golden oldies. No, not from the radio on the counter. From your toilet paper holder. Yes, this was real. In the 1970s, when every appliance seemed to want a built-in gadget, someone thought, why not combine two of life's essentials, news and toilet paper? And they did. These holders came with little AM radios inside, complete with tuning dials and antennas. You could spin the dial while doing your business and catch up on the weather, ball games, or morning talk shows. Over time, these novelties fizzled out. Static interference, short battery life, and poor sound quality all contributed. And of course, the arrival of portable radios, and later smartphones, meant you no longer needed a broadcast in your bathroom. Still, for one brief moment, doing your business came with a soundtrack. But if you think that was peak home entertainment, wait until you step into the basement and look up. Because the ceiling was the real star of the show. Let us set the mood. You are in a dimly lit basement, drink in hand, and above you, a ceiling that sparkles like the night sky. Welcome to the world of starlight ceilings. These were not just ceilings. They were statements. Tiny pinprick lights or glitter-infused paint created an effect that made you feel like you were sipping cocktails under the stars, without ever leaving your house. Popular from the 1960s through the 1980s, especially in home bars and man caves, these ceilings added a dash of Vegas to your Midwestern basement. Paired with shag carpet, wood-paneled walls, and maybe a neon beer sign, it was a party waiting to happen. People took pride in their basement bars back then. They were not just spaces to store extra chairs. They were event spaces complete with built-in counters, mirrors, and mood lighting. Of course, tastes changed. What once felt dazzling now feels a little kitschy. But if you ever had one, you know how special it felt to flick the switch and watch the ceiling come alive. And speaking of homes that did the most with their design, you will not believe the things they used to bolt right into the kitchen counter. Today, we have sleek appliances and clean countertops. But back in the day, kitchens were packed with personality and surprisingly aggressive tools. We are talking about nutcrackers and jar openers that were built into the kitchen counter or mounted under cabinets. These things were serious hardware. The nutcrackers came with long metal handles and could crack even the toughest walnut shell with one swift squeeze. Meanwhile, the jar openers looked like a sawtooth clamp designed to grip any stubborn lid and twist it free. No slipping, no struggling, just brute force and a little leverage. These tools were often installed right near the sink or stove so you could multitask like a champ. Eventually, as design trends leaned toward minimalism and countertop clutter became a crime, these gadgets quietly disappeared. People traded in their bolted-down contraptions for drawer-friendly tools. But the charm of having your kitchen permanently outfitted for battle? Unmatched. It was a time when kitchens were built to work, not just look pretty. And while we are talking about functional design, let us take a step down, literally, into one of the most unforgettable living room features ever built. Welcome to the pit. The conversation pit. The only thing cooler than a living room with shag carpet and avocado green furniture? A living room you had to step down into. That was the sunken conversation pit, an architectural marvel that screamed both style and swagger. Instead of arranging sofas and chairs around a room, builders literally dug out a square right into the floor, creating a recessed lounge area surrounded by built-in seating. Think orange velvet cushions, low coffee tables, and ashtrays on every corner. But as time marched on, these pits became a hazard. Easy to trip into, hard to clean, and impossible to rearrange furniture in. Still, there is no denying their impact. They turned conversation into an event. Today, they are rare, often filled in and flattened out. But if you find a house that still has one, you have found something special. And while those pits might have felt warm and inviting, the real warmth came from something else entirely, something glowing from the wall, quietly humming in the background. Before central heat became standard and long before smart thermostats could talk to you, homes stayed warm with a little help from something simple and glowing. Electric wall heaters. Mounted near baseboards or tucked under windows, these metal-faced boxes gave off a slow, steady heat that was equal parts cozy and ominous. The signature look? That faint blue or red glow from inside the slats, like your house had a tiny furnace in every room. Some even came with built-in nightlights, a soft, flickering bulb that guided your midnight snack runs, or made sure you did not stub a toe on your way to the bathroom. And in the dead of winter, that little hum meant safety and comfort. Eventually, more efficient systems and better insulation made these heaters obsolete. They were covered, removed, or simply unplugged. But for the folks who grew up warming their backs beside one, the memory runs deep. And speaking of compact home fixes, how about a bathtub that folded into the wall like a hidden passage to squeaky clean comfort? Imagine stepping into your bathroom and pulling the entire tub down from the wall like a secret bookcase in an old mystery novel. Sounds bizarre? Welcome to the fold-down Murphy bathtub. In homes where every square foot mattered, tiny apartments, mobile homes, and city flats, this was an absolute game changer. Just like its cousin, the Murphy bed, the tub folded vertically into the wall when not in use, freeing up valuable space for movement or storage. You could pull down the tub, run a warm bath, and feel like you had tricked your bathroom into being twice as big. Of course, the novelty wore off. The plumbing was tricky, the fixtures were clunky, and eventually, more compact tubs and better design made the Murphy-style setup unnecessary. But it was another example of how homes used to bend over backward, literally, to fit people's needs. And if you think bathing next to your linen closet was wild, wait until you hear about the kitchens that doubled as craft stations. Cooking and sewing might not seem like a natural pairing, but mid-century homemakers would beg to differ. Enter the built-in sewing cabinet, tucked right into the kitchen like it belonged there. These compact stations were more than just drawers and thread. They were full-on sewing nooks hidden inside cabinetry. Some were built under counters, others folded out like a little desk. The idea was simple. While your pie was in the oven, you could mend a sock, adjust a hemline, or stitch up a torn apron. The sewing machine itself was often on a lift, so you could press a button or pull a lever and watch it rise like a domestic Excalibur. It made perfect sense in a world where home economics reigned supreme. But of course, as ready-made clothes got cheaper and kitchens got sleeker, the sewing station quietly vanished. Now we separate our workspaces. But back then, there was no hard line between chores, just time, skill, and whatever needed fixing. And speaking of fixing things, remember when air conditioners needed a curtain just to function? Ah yes, the window-mounted air conditioner. Not the sleek, whisper-quiet versions we have today, but the bulky, boxy beasts of the past. These units were loud, leaky, and cooled exactly one room, if you were lucky. But they had one signature feature that makes them unforgettable: the side curtains. Not actual fabric, mind you, but accordion-style plastic wings that extended to fill the space between the unit and the edges of your window frame. These things were a pain to install and a nightmare to seal. That cold blast of relief in the middle of a July heat wave was worth every drop of condensation dripping down your wall. Some units had knobs, others had pull chains. All of them sounded like a freight train, but that was the sound of comfort. Over time, as central air became more affordable and homes were built with better insulation, these rattling rectangles started to disappear. But the memory lingers. Especially if you ever spent a childhood summer parked in front of one, eating popsicles and pretending you lived in the Arctic. Now that we are talking about unique seating situations, wait until you hear about the architectural wonder that was built for lounging and never standing. So let us talk about telex carphones, the early kind. These were supposed to be the peak of convenience, your own private phone line inside your car. Sounds slick, right? Except using one felt like yelling into a toaster that barely heard you. The equipment alone took up half your trunk, with clunky transceivers and roof antennas that made your car look like a spy van. You would pick up the phone, wait for a signal, and then shout into the handset while everyone in traffic stared at you like you were calling from the moon. Reception? Spotty on the best of days. Dropouts were constant, and unless you were in the middle of a major city, the odds of actually getting through were slim to none. Add to that the price tag, which could run higher than the car itself, and it becomes pretty clear why telex carphones never caught on. Not to mention, you had zero privacy. People in the next lane could hear your entire conversation. It was supposed to be the future, but it felt more like a prank. Still, if we are talking about future flops, nothing tops the brief moment in time where Hertz thought regular folks might fly to work. There was a brief, glorious moment in the 1980s when being a math nerd actually made you cool, and that was all thanks to the digital calculator watch. You could do basic math right on your wrist: addition, subtraction, maybe a little division if you were feeling wild. These watches were sleek, futuristic, and they gave kids the illusion of being a young computer genius. But the novelty wore off faster than a sticker on a locker. Teachers banned them from classrooms almost instantly. Kids were using them to cheat on math tests or just to show off during spelling bees. Parents got tired of replacing batteries, and school administrators were not thrilled with little kids clicking away during morning announcements. Plus, if you had even slightly chubby fingers, good luck hitting the right button. It was a gadget that promised convenience, but delivered mostly frustration and a few detention slips. And while that fad disappeared into backpacks and sock drawers, another 1980s product was trying way too hard to sell itself with big names and bigger commercials. But even with a football legend at the front, it still missed the catch. Leaving kids in the car while you shopped was not only common, it was considered efficient parenting. You would crack the window a little, toss a snack in the back seat, and tell them not to touch the gear shift. That was it. No seat warmers, no climate control, just the burning hot vinyl seats and a juice box to keep them busy. You would run into the grocery store, the post office, maybe even the mall, and come back 20 minutes later like it was nothing. Sometimes the kid was asleep, sometimes reading, sometimes playing with the door locks like it was a game. There were no viral videos or angry phone calls to the authorities. People assumed kids were tougher back then, or maybe they just really trusted that nothing would go wrong. Sure, you would get the occasional warning to not talk to strangers through the car window, but that was the extent of it. It was all part of the era's free-range approach to parenting. And while the kids were stuck in the car, the adults, they were likely sneaking a break of their own, somewhere smoky and very much on school property. Imagine a time when the centerpiece of every living room was a bulky, boxy behemoth, the CRT TV. Coming into prominence in the 1950s, this technological marvel turned the humble living room into a bustling family theater. Picture the excitement as families gathered around to watch the moon landing or the latest episode of I Love Lucy. Despite its hefty frame, the CRT TV was the window to the world until the sleek and slender flat screens of the early 2000s gently nudged it into the annals of history. Yet, ask any vintage video game enthusiast, and they'll wax poetic about the unmatched charm of playing on a CRT. Before streaming in HD, the CRT TV was the family's bond, the newsbringer, and the entertainer, all rolled into one. Because in 1969, Pan American Airlines launched a waiting list for commercial flights to the moon. No joke. People were lining up to get their names on this list. The idea was simple. We made it to the moon, so the next logical step was to sell tickets. Over 90,000 people signed up, excited about the idea of sipping martinis in zero gravity and watching the Earth rise outside their window. And Pan Am treated it like a real thing. They issued membership cards, called it the First Moon Flights Club, and promised that when the day came, they would call. The only problem? There was no plan, no actual timeline, no spaceship. It was a publicity stunt that spiraled out of control. People bought into the dream hard, and Pan Am was not about to correct them. When the company went bankrupt in the 1980s, it had never even started building anything to take people to space. The dream fizzled out, but it proved just how hungry the world was for a taste of the future. And nowhere was that hunger more obvious than in people's homes, where they tried to bring cinema magic to life with a machine the size of a small refrigerator. Slap bracelets were the forbidden fruit of every 1980s classroom. One second they were straight, the next, snap, they wrapped around your wrist like a coiled snake with attitude. Covered in neon fabric, animal print, or glitter, they looked innocent enough. But underneath the fun was a thin strip of spring steel that had one job: launch at high speed and curve mid-air. The problem? That metal core wasn't exactly kid-proof. If the fabric wore down, that hidden strip turned into a razor-thin whip. Kids ended up with deep scratches, cuts, and in some cases, open wounds. Teachers confiscated them. Parents complained. Schools banned them faster than you could say, Lisa Frank. Still, the appeal was undeniable. There was something addictive about that sharp snap on your wrist, like your bracelet had a personality of its own. Toy companies tried to fix the design, adding thicker fabric and safety tabs. But by then, the damage was done, and so were dozens of kids' sleeves, wrists, and friendships. And while slap bracelets left marks on your arm, the next trend turned your living room into a slow-motion air hazard. Max Headroom was supposed to be the future, a computer-generated, sarcastic television host who stuttered stylishly and wore sunglasses at night. He was the face of a dystopian digital world, equal parts cyberpunk icon and artificial intelligence with an attitude. Advertisers loved him, especially soda companies, so someone had the bright idea: let us give him a full television series. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. The Max Headroom show was visually interesting but narratively confusing. It tried to blend science fiction with satire, wrapped in glitchy editing and background noise. Most of the time, you were not sure if the show was broken or just being artsy. The plotline featured underground hackers, corrupt corporations, and a bleak media landscape, which ironically kind of predicted the internet. And Max, once a futuristic face of advertising, became more of a trivia answer at bar night. Still, his influence stuck around in weird ways. You can spot traces of Max Headroom in everything from video game villains to pop music videos. And if you thought that was sensory overload, wait until we talk about the time theaters tried to make movies smell like real life. Saturday morning cartoons were a sacred ritual. You poured yourself a bowl of cereal, plopped down in front of the television, and prepared to spend the next few hours in a sugar-fueled animation binge. But sprinkled between all those talking animals and laser-blasting space battles? Beer ads? That's right. Alcohol companies had no problem promoting their newest brew to an audience still wearing footy pajamas. You could go from He-Man saving the universe to a slow-motion pour of foamy beer into a frosted mug, all in the same commercial break. And these were not vague nods to adult life. We are talking full-on beer jingles with catchy tunes and smiling actors, clinking glasses in backyard barbecues. Kids grew up humming these tunes without even knowing what they were singing about. To the networks, airtime was airtime. If it sold, it played. No one raised a red flag. Parents were more worried about how many Pop-Tarts you ate than whether your favorite cartoon was brought to you by a six-pack of light beer. And when the commercials ended, you ran outside with your friends. No shoes, no helmets, just two wheels and a scraped knee waiting to happen. The typewriter, with its rhythmic tap-tap and the ceremonial ding at the end of a line, was the soul of written communication. From Mark Twain to the Beat Poets, it was the instrument of choice for crafting narratives. The introduction of electric models, like the IBM Selectric in the 20th century, was akin to moving from a horse-drawn carriage to a sleek automobile. Yet, the dawn of personal computing in the late 20th century gently ushered this stalwart into the shadows. Still, the typewriter remains a symbol of creativity and nostalgia, cherished by those who yearn for the imprint of ink on paper. Enter the Sony CV2000. This was supposed to be the next big leap in home entertainment, a video recorder you could use at home long before VHS was a thing. It sounds amazing, right? Until you realize this beast was massive, heavy, and cost more than most people's cars at the time. We are talking over $1,000 in 1960s money, which is a good chunk of a year's salary for the average person. But price was just one problem. The CV2000 used reel-to-reel videotape, and even getting it to work with your television set was a gamble. It only recorded in black and white. You had to plug in a separate camera, adjust the knobs just right, and cross your fingers. If anything went wrong, and it often did, you were stuck. Playback was spotty, the tapes jammed constantly, and editing footage? Forget it. For a product meant to bring television magic into your home, it mostly just brought headaches. And despite being the first of its kind, it quietly faded into obscurity, beaten later by cheaper, easier options. But you know what still had people gathering around the television back then? A wild piece of gear that looked like it came straight off a flying saucer. Hypercolor shirts were the 80s fashion flex you didn't ask for. Touch them, and they changed color. Sweat? Changed color. Breathing too hard in class? Boom, color change. These shirts were made with thermochromic dyes that reacted to temperature, which was science speak for everyone can now see your armpit situation. They were magical for about 10 minutes and then quickly turned into an awkward middle school experiment. But the real danger was in the dye. Some hypercolor clothing was made with chemicals that caused skin irritation, allergic reactions, and, in worst-case scenarios, a rash that looked like a heat map of embarrassment. Combine that with fading colors, poor washing instructions, and mystery reactions when exposed to sunblock or deodorant, and you had a garment that fought back. Eventually, the clothing faded for good, literally and figuratively, and safety concerns helped bury the trend for a while. Still, for a few brief years, it was the coolest, most color-shifting thing you could wear until it gave you hives. If your shirt didn't leave a mark, the next toy definitely did, especially when it was supposed to be just plastic. Back before Halloween became a yearly anxiety fest, taking unmarked candy from a neighbor was just how the night worked. You rang a doorbell, yelled, "Trick or treat," and got handed whatever someone had lying around. Loose jelly beans? Great. Homemade fudge and wax paper? Even better. The idea that candy needed to be sealed and tamper-proof had not fully caught on yet. No one was worried about needles or poison. Your biggest fear was getting a box of raisins. Parents did not comb through your haul under a flashlight. They just told you not to eat it all at once. The neighbor handing out popcorn balls or wrapped caramels was not suspicious. They were the cool house. Trust was the currency of the neighborhood, and if someone put effort into a treat, you respected it. Now, we wrap everything in layers of packaging and double-check labels like candy is a security threat. And after all that sugar buzz, you already knew where the real party was, under a disco ball, skates on, and lyrics your parents probably should have listened to more closely. The VCR, a marvel that arrived in the 1970s, was akin to a magician in a box, granting us the power to capture time itself. Suddenly, TV schedules no longer dictated our lives. We could record, rewind, and relive our favorite moments at will. The VCR was the herald of home cinema, a concept so revolutionary that even its hefty price tag couldn't dampen its allure. It's a testament to its impact that phrases like "be kind, rewind" are etched in the collective memory of a generation. As DVDs and streaming services emerged, the VCR's star faded, but its legacy of shaping family movie nights and introducing the world to video rentals lives on. Muscle pants for kids, that was the pitch. Somewhere, a grown-up looked at a child and said, "You know what this kid needs? Pants that scream steroid energy." These were Zubaz-style leggings with wild patterns and stretch material designed to mimic the bodybuilding look of adult gym rats. Except they were made for children. The problem was not just the patterns, which, by the way, included everything from neon zebra stripes to camouflage lightning bolts. It was that kids had no idea how to wear them. The pants were often too tight or too loose, and they came with this weird fake athletic vibe that clashed hard with the Sesame Street lunchboxes. These pants were a hard no. Schools started quietly banning them for being distracting, and parents got tired of explaining to teachers that no, their child was not training for a junior weightlifting championship. They were just victims of 1980s fashion. The trend came and went faster than you could say bicep curl. But speaking of trying too hard to look futuristic, let us talk about the time Atari thought your forehead could play video games. Toy helicopters in the 1980s were mechanical marvels and total mayhem. They came with battery packs, long plastic wires, and a launch mechanism that would send a spinning metal-bladed helicopter screaming through the air at top speed. These choppers weren't made of foam. They had real weight, real torque, and real potential to slice through your bangs. Every kid had the same goal: launch it as high as possible. Every adult had the same reaction: duck and cover. The metal blades would spin with enough force to cut skin, tangle in hair, or put a dent in your wood paneling. Worst part? Some came with combat attachments like pretend missiles or landing claws, because nothing screams safe fun like turning your living room into an active airspace. Stories of black eyes, forehead welts, and chipped teeth piled up fast. Eventually, manufacturers were forced to swap out metal parts for plastic, reduce power, and add so many warning labels it looked like the back of a shampoo bottle. But by then, the damage was done, literally. If your brain managed to survive the helicopter hits, good luck keeping it safe with the art supplies that followed. It looked like something straight out of a haunted dollhouse and somehow got greenlit as a beauty product. The Rejuvenique face mask promised younger, firmer skin through electrical muscle stimulation, which is a fancy way of saying it zapped your face with little shocks. Advertised by a former soap opera star, the mask wrapped around your head like a plastic exoskeleton and turned your facial routine into something that felt like a scene from a horror film. The idea was that the stimulation would tone your face like a gym tones your body, but customers mostly reported mild burns, numbness, and the distinct feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. Despite airing on television with the enthusiasm of a late-night miracle cure, it flopped hard. It was the kind of product that felt less like a beauty tool and more like a sci-fi movie prop that somehow escaped the set. Still, you had to admire the ambition. If you could survive the Rejuvenique, surely you could survive anything the 1980s had to throw at you. And as it turns out, that next throw was straight at the kids, because someone thought gym fashion should start in elementary school. If you were a kid in the 1970s, chugging water straight from the garden hose was basically a rite of passage. You would be out playing tag, riding bikes, or building questionable tree forts and suddenly realize you were dying of thirst. No one ran inside for a water bottle. You went for the hose. You cranked the knob, let the sun-heated water blast out for a few seconds, and then put your mouth right on the nozzle. No one asked where the hose had been or what might be growing inside it. Rubbery taste? Totally normal. Mystery specks? Built character. Parents barely noticed unless you soaked your shirt. Nobody thought twice about what kinds of chemicals were leaching from the plastic or whether small bugs had made it their home. We just drank and kept running. But when it came to food, there were rules. Except during Halloween, when those rules took a break and you took candy from strangers with zero hesitation. The floppy disk, a cornerstone of early personal computing, emerged in the late 1960s, symbolizing the first foray into portable digital storage. When the 3.5-inch floppy was introduced, many pondered, who would ever need that much storage? A notion that now elicits a chuckle in our gigabyte-saturated age. The act of inserting a floppy disk, accompanied by its characteristic click, defined an era of computing in the 80s and 90s. Despite its obsolescence due to advancing storage technologies, the floppy disk endures in the digital lexicon, immortalized as the universal save file icon. This subtle homage serves as a nostalgic reminder of the disk's pivotal role in the evolution of data storage and management. Electric slimming belts were the miracle fitness gadget of the 1980s, or so the ads claimed. Wrap it around your waist, plug it in, flip the switch, and prepare to get electrocuted into peak physical form. These belts sent pulsing electric shocks into your abdomen under the promise of stimulating muscles and burning fat. What they really did? Cause skin burns, fainting spells, and enough emergency room visits to make the Food and Drug Administration step in. They buzzed, jolted, and sometimes sparked, especially if you were sweaty, which the instruction manual encouraged. You'd lie there, twitching like a frog in biology class, convinced the pain meant it was working. These devices became so notorious that many were banned or pulled from shelves by the late 1980s. Today's fitness tech might still overpromise, but at least it doesn't literally jolt you awake. Unless you miss the 1980s, in which case, wait until you see what they handed to kids in the toy aisle next. A survival knife inspired by Rambo. Because what could go wrong? Aquanet's scented hairspray line hit the shelves in 1968, hoping to combine the hold of a hair helmet with the charm of a perfume ad. The brand was already a household name. By then, Aquanet had glued more bouffants in place than any other product on the market. But someone in marketing must have thought, you know what this cloud of chemicals needs? Flowers. So they rolled out a special line of floral-scented versions. There were rose, jasmine, even a spring breeze blend. The idea was to give users a refreshing, elegant aroma while locking their hairstyle in place for hours. But it backfired, fast. The floral notes clashed with every other scent in a person's routine. The smells mixed into something that made elevators unbearable. To make matters worse, the scent faded quickly, leaving behind the signature Aquanet chemical musk, just with a weird dying flower twist. Even die-hard Aquanet fans could not justify it. By the early 1970s, the line quietly disappeared from shelves. Aquanet stuck around, but its foray into fragrance was a short and smelly detour. But if you want a true example of how the 1960s misunderstood its audience, just look at the British bike that tried to win over American teens by shrinking everything they loved. The Garbage Pail Kids movie is the textbook example of a terrible idea being taken way too seriously. The trading cards were already controversial. Gross-out humor, exaggerated features, bodily functions turned into punchlines. But they were iconic. So naturally, someone decided to turn them into a full-length feature film. and it was a mess. The characters were played by little people in horrifying animatronic masks that barely moved, giving every scene a nightmarish vibe. The plot? A vague attempt at a coming-of-age story with elements of science fiction and slapstick comedy, all of it soaked in questionable effects and even worse acting. Even die-hard fans of the Cards walked out of theaters feeling like they had just lost a piece of their childhood. Critics called it one of the worst films ever made, and audiences agreed. It tanked at the box office, vanished from theaters, and was quietly swept under the rug. The only thing this movie managed to accomplish was proving that not all nostalgia belongs on the big screen. But if you think that was a bitter taste, just wait until we talk about a candy bar that tried to be classy and ended up at the bottom of the vending machine. Yep, you heard that right. In the 1970s, you could go to the store and buy a science kit that came with actual radioactive samples. Glowing rocks, uranium ore, the whole radioactive shebang. These kits were sold as educational tools, a way to spark curiosity in young minds. And they did, right before they sparked some very serious health concerns. Back then, no one batted an eye. Parents figured if it came in a box with a smiling cartoon scientist on the front, it had to be safe. Kids were in their rooms waving Geiger counters around like they were playing laser tag, all while absorbing trace amounts of nuclear material. It was science. It was cool. It was totally wild. Of course, by the time the risks caught up to the curiosity, these kits had already found their way into thousands of households. That glow-in-the-dark magic? Yeah, turns out it was not so magical after all. But if you thought glowing uranium in your closet was risky, wait until you hear what people kept in their trucks, in full view, completely unlocked, and nobody cared.
Enter the 1990s, and with it, the era of the Discman. Sony's portable CD player changed the game by offering music lovers a new level of sound quality and the novelty of skipping tracks with the push of a button. It was the soundtrack to countless commutes and the precursor to our modern, on-demand listening habits. But as MP3 players and streaming services emerged, offering vast libraries of music in compact, file-based formats, the Discman's reign came to an end. The transition from physical discs to digital files marked a pivotal moment in music consumption, pushing portability and convenience to new heights. Yet for a time, the Discman was the pinnacle of personal audio technology, a testament to the ever-evolving journey of music and its enthusiasts.
Ah yes, Sinclair's home chemistry lab sets. Nothing says wholesome childhood fun like handing 10-year-olds real acids, flammable powders, and the ability to create small explosions in the garage. In the early 1960s, these kits were everywhere. Marketed as educational, they were part science, part spectacle. Kids could grow crystals, mix glowing liquids, and experiment with reactions that would make any science teacher twitch. But the truth? These kits were a ticking time bomb. Figuratively and sometimes literally. They included potassium nitrate, sulfur, and other compounds that today would be locked in a school lab under triple-sealed storage. There were instructions for creating mini smoke bombs, acids that could burn through metal, and even chemical reactions that, if mixed incorrectly, could send a glass beaker flying across the room. Lawsuits started piling in. So did safety warnings. By the end of the decade, the most dangerous sets were pulled from shelves, and future versions were watered down to the point of being glorified food coloring. Still, for a brief window of time, American kids had access to a fully stocked chemical arsenal. But if you think a little sulfur was intense, you should smell what came next. And no, it wasn't roses. Back in the 1970s, asbestos was the miracle material nobody questioned. It was fireproof, heatproof, durable, and completely packed into everyday items like ironing board pads. If you were ironing your Sunday best or pressing collars for school, chances are you were standing over a big square of asbestos without even knowing it. The logic back then was that if something could handle heat, it was good. And asbestos? It could handle just about anything, except your lungs. That stuff did not just stay in the pad. It crumbled, it flaked, it floated right up into the air and got breathed in over and over again. Still, no one thought twice. Moms would lean over the ironing board, kids running around, windows shut, and steam rising up like a sauna of danger. It was not until years later that we figured out those innocent little chores came with a free side of cancer risk. And speaking of leaving kids in questionable situations, sometimes they were not in the house at all. Sometimes they were left in the car, alone, with the windows rolled up. Homes used to be full of quirks that made no sense, until you lived with them. If any of these sparked a memory, share it in the comments, tap like and subscribe for more weird slices of the past.